My name is Richard Kannwischer, and I am so excited to invite you to partner with me to go on a great journey to deepen your faith. Tom Wright is one of the greatest biblical scholars of a generation, and we have an opportunity for you. Through our website, you can go to peachtreechurch.com/dwell for the opportunity for you to be a part of a learning community. It is a class that Tom has written and delivered for you to be able to take online at any time you want to, for you individually or for you as a group, to be able to learn what does it mean to dwell in God's presence through the Psalms. There's 30 great sessions. You can break them up in any way you want to, and it's an unbelievable chance to learn from one of the greatest minds of a generation with the Bible. I look forward to joining you in the task. Hey, Peachtree, what an exciting year in ministry that we have before us, because our hope and our aspiration is that we're learning how to dwell with God. We're learning how to pray together and to pray the words that people have used for centuries in order to come into a greater knowledge and relationship with God. The book of the Psalms has given voice to our prayers throughout the years. And Rich Villodas is going to help us to be able to discover what it means for us to dwell in God's presence. Enjoy this conversation. It is the R&R show, and
hopefully people are experiencing rest and relaxation.
Yes, I was trying to think of what other R words that might be appropriate, but I think that hopefully it's not so much relaxation that you're falling asleep during the podcast. We're not trying to
listening right before bedtime.
Yeah, exactly. Although Dallas Willard, and everybody in the congregation knows I love a good Dallas Willard quote, says that sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is to fall asleep thinking about God. That's like the ultimate act of trust, is to be able to go to sleep thinking about God. Yeah. So we're talking about this year living in God's presence with the Psalms. What does it mean to dwell in God as He dwells within us and around us? And we have a lot of things that we believe are happening to us as we walk this journey together, as we pray these prayers, as we push past the typical quiet time in morning, noon, and night. We're allowing these phrases, these song lyrics that people have lifted up for generations upon generations. Because even if you think about it, this is the prayer book by which Jesus was schooled.
Yes.
Yes. And these are the prayers. It's the most quoted book in the New Testament, the Psalms are. And that's because Jesus relied on these prayers in His life with God. We're getting to do that together.
It's really beautiful. And I want to pray the prayers Jesus prayed.
Yeah. So hopefully we're experiencing that you're becoming more amazed, more curious, more hopeful. And this is the month of May. Spring is here, and it's the month of Mother's Day, High Holy Day, and graduations and weddings and all kinds of things. And we're talking about becoming vulnerable. What do you think of when you think of vulnerability?
The first image I think about is someone who is unguarded, someone in whom there's nothing to prove, there's nothing to protect, there's nothing to possess. What you see is what you get. But unguarded, I mean, someone who's not vulnerable is someone who is very often self-protective. You can't really get in. Vulnerability says, I'm going to allow you to get in here.
My wife and I were having a moment of intense fellowship. What's the right way to put it? We were having a significant conversation recently where I was struck by how she wasn't willing to defend herself. In the way that she was like, I'm here, I'm completely open. What is it that we need? And I mean, being vulnerable and not being defensive is one of the most disarming feelings in the world, right?
There's so much freedom in that. And as someone who has
never fought with your wife,
once every 3 years or so, it is what a gift it is to be unguarded in that way, non-defensive. the whole environment changes when that happens.
It is the breeding ground of trust and of love. And when you think about the person of Jesus and who he is, the whole incarnation is that God is willing to be vulnerable to you and to me.
Yeah. Jesus doesn't come in as a fully grown adult. He comes in as a very vulnerable infant, woundable, not defensive. I mean, the incarnation, I know we're in May here, but, the incarnation speaks to the very vulnerability of God. And then we just finished, the Easter season, Good Friday, the way Jesus is crucified on a cross, vulnerable. The God that we are in relationship with is a vulnerable one, which is, think about that for a moment. It's really humbling when we realize how vulnerable God is and how I tend not to be.
Yeah. A couple of months ago, we talked about curiosity and we talked about bringing your questions to God. This is a related but different topic where we're talking about asking God for what you need. This is about letting your guard down to be able to say, God, will you help me?
Yeah.
Can you think of a time in your life when either you yourself or you've walked alongside somebody who really had to ask God for what they needed?
I think about Rosie and I married 19 years, and the third year of our marriage, we were part of an intensive marriage small group. My predecessor, a guy by the name of Pete Scazzaro, was leading that with his wife, Jerry. So for 8 months, twice a month, 3 hours each time, we were going deep into our marriage, Rosie and I, being guided by them. By the end of the 8 months, we came to a point where we were going to name maybe a 2 to 3 word confession, declaration out loud before our spouse in light of the 8 months. If you could summarize the last 8 months, what would you exclaim? It could be words. It could be good words. It could be hard words, whatever it is. My 2 words were, I need. To get to that place was very difficult. And to say it before her and before the 16 other people that we were journeying with for 8 months, I need. And I never forgot the person who was facilitating that moment said, say it again, Rich. And I'm like, I need louder. I need, and for me, it was my ability to say I need is the degree to which I could say this is the degree to which I will live in greater freedom, greater openness, greater dependence, greater intimacy. And those 2 words, now that happened at the time of our conversation, that happened 15 years ago. And I remember it vividly like it was yesterday because everything inside of me does not want to say I need. It wants to say, I'll figure it out myself.
Yeah.
I'm self-sufficient. Yeah. I can make it happen. But it's such a vulnerable word, a vulnerable phrase. I need. I don't have everything. There's something that you have that I need to benefit from, that I need to survive through, that I need to grow in. I'd rather not say that.
So in your writing, you spent some time talking about the practices of self-examination.
Yeah.
And you use one of the Psalms that we're anchoring in this month, Psalm 139,
Yeah.
Search me, O God,
Yeah.
which is a pretty intimidating prayer to pray with sincerity, right?
Yes. Yeah. To be honest and say, search me, O God, see, and then the passage is, see if there's any way of offense in me and lead me in the way everlasting, or see if there's, and what's fascinating about that Psalm is the way it begins is David has a full recognition that God knows everything about him. You formed me in my mother's womb. Wherever I go, you're with me, you're there. And then by the end of it, he realizes even though God is present to me and knows everything about me, I often don't know everything about myself. So Lord, I'm going to need you to help me, search me. I need to do some interior examination. It's a very vulnerable thing to do.
So we're Presbyterians, so we often, look to John Calvin as the history of Peachtree and that kind of thing. And you when you talk about this in your books, you quote John Calvin.
Yeah.
And I may get the quote wrong, but it's, you can only give as much as you know about yourself to much as you know about God. That self-awareness. And I would say, kind of in the vulnerability, kind of a cousin at least.
Yeah.
maybe even a sibling of self-awareness is self-openness. Like to be able to say, God, search me.
Yes.
How does somebody go through the process of saying, God, search me? Like what does that look like in actual practice of self-examination?
The first thought that I tend to go in this respect is there's so much that God wants to disclose to me through my own reactions. So there's lots of revelation to be found in my reactions.
Oh, you're meddling now.
And so it's often the case that there is some form of reactivity in me, sometimes a very disproportionate reaction to an event, to an email, to a word of feedback from someone. And all of a sudden I find myself embarrassed. I find myself ashamed. I find myself angry. I find myself resentful because of this interaction I've had with someone. And then the question becomes, what does my reaction tell me about me? Lord, what do you want? And so I think one of the ways to begin that process of vulnerability and interior examination is to take inventory of our reactions. Lord, what are you trying to tell me about me? I think that's one way to begin to introduce that. Another is we use a tool at our church called Explore the Iceberg. What's happening beneath the surface of my life that often I don't invite God into, and I don't usually invite myself into, and usually no one else either. And the 4 questions are very simply, what am I mad about? What am I sad about? What am I anxious about? What am I glad about? And those 4 questions, as elementary as they can be, I've led exercises like this with my children. I've led them with business people. I've led them with professors in college of philosophy. I mean, across, and it's amazing what gets unlocked when we're asking these very elementary questions about our anger, our grief, our fears, our joys. So those are just a couple of ways of beginning the process of letting God in.
Yeah. I remember when I read about those 4 questions, and I've used those in groups and in my own self-reflection as well. And you're right, they're super basic. Tell them to us one more time just so we get it.
What are you mad about?
What are you mad about?
What are you sad about?
Sad.
What are you anxious about? And what are you glad about?
Yeah. It is amazing the world that gets unlocked.
Yeah.
By just being willing to spend a little time.
Yeah.
And to be able to answer those basic questions, particularly in community.
Yeah.
Like when you see that in a group. I mean, you can take that into a workplace and to try to create a higher degree of self-awareness and vulnerability in that workplace by just saying, what are you upset about? That we're not talking about.
Yeah. It connects people deeply. And I think the power of those questions are what gets unearthed. We all came from families that in some respects gave us permission to, or no permission to be angry, to be sad, to feel fear. And so we're tapping into some deep family of origin issues on how we were formed in our developmental years and how that stays with us today. So it's not just a simple mad, sad. It's like there's some stuff that's being unearthed from way back in the day that we still need to attend to.
Yeah. But one of the petitions that we have and one of the regular prayers of the Psalms is for God to bless us.
Yeah.
I know that there's always the danger of kind of a health and wealth, prosperity gospel of thinking what that is. And so sometimes there's just a hesitation to say, God, bless me. Why do you think it's important for us to be able to pray along with the Psalms that, God, will you bless me?
To bless someone is to speak well of them, to confer something on them in such a way that helps them to root themselves in something far more beautiful, far more deeper than accomplishments, achievements, possessions, things along those lines. And so Jesus gets baptized, and the verse of the Father says, "This is my Son whom I love, and him I'm well pleased." You know, Jacob is wrestling with the angel of the Lord and says, "I'm not going to let you go until you bless me." There is living from a deeper center in terms of what's being spoken of me. So when we're saying, God bless me, Lord, yeah, it'd be nice to get some material things to help me go through life here. But I think the essence of that prayer is, I can't live the way that you've designed me to live unless I am receiving words that you think about me, words that I need to hear from you. I mean, isn't this the challenge of parenting? And when there are relationships that are estranged with parents and children, they're longing for the blessing of their parent, longing for the blessing of their father. Can you speak a good word over me? I'm longing for something here. Back to your friend Dallas Willard. You know, Willard has done a whole lot of things
homie.
on blessing people. Like, we don't know how to bless people.
Yeah.
And it's such a deep need that we all have. But I think as we're praying that in the Psalm, Lord, bless me, I want to live from a deeper center, the center of your words of affirmation spoken over me.
We're constantly, like Jacob, scavenging, for the blessing.
Yeah.
And God's the only one that can give it.
Mm.
Particularly give it in an unconditional way where it's not merited.
Yes.
Or it's not, you do this and I'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
And God is the only source of that just supreme goodness. I mean, you referenced the baptism, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. Jesus hadn't done anything yet.
Right.
He hasn't healed anybody. He hasn't taught anybody. He hasn't called any disciples. He hasn't, this is my son.
Yeah. I've heard it said, like, the essence of prayer is about waiting for a word that you cannot speak to yourself.
Say that again.
The essence of prayer is about waiting for a word that you cannot speak to yourself. Like, I love, like, looking in the mirror, having these, I can do it today, and these self-affirmations and all that.
Yeah.
But prayer is basically saying there's a word that you need it spoken over you. You can't speak it to yourself. And that's the essence of blessing. It's like, I need to wait for this word. And so as we're reading the Psalms and as we're in prayer, we're saying, Lord, bless me. Because there's only one word, really. It's your word that's truly going to fill my life to the degree that I really need it to.
Yeah. In Hebrew, the word for bless is the word to kneel. Mm. And so it can only be received in that posture of
beautiful
vulnerability, right? Like when you kneel, you cannot defend yourself. You cannot attack.
Yeah.
You can only be in that posture of receiving. I have found that in my own prayers, one of the things that the Psalms do for me, particularly these types of prayers, is that they push me to pray in a way where I know that I am in need and I am not in charge. Because sometimes I pray in such a way as to manage expectations, as opposed to, God, I am in need. This person is in need. I can't engineer the outcome. I can't make this happen. I am declaring my dependence in a way that my pride doesn't usually want me to do.
To pray out of our sense of need is very vulnerable, because what happens when God doesn't respond in the way that I want? And I have found one of the things I've had to work against is, to what degree am I willing to pray big prayers in hope that God's going to respond? And over the course of my journey, I've had seasons where I'm not going to pray that. Because what if God doesn't do it? It's a very vulnerable prayer. Will I be able to deal with God not answering this particular prayer? Therefore, I'm not going to pray it. I think when I refuse to pray those prayers, there's something missing, whether it unfolds the way I want or whether God doesn't. There's something, again, that unites me to God. But it's very vulnerable to do that.
If you are willing to pray with expectation and anticipation, but without entitlement, there's this fine line in there of leaning into asking, like, I think in the New Testament, I think of like the woman before the unjust judge, and how, like, if this callous, uncaring judge is willing to grant her request because of her vulnerability and her persistence, how much more does God want to give and respond The place we start this month is a good place to kind of conclude this podcast, which is the first place of vulnerability, I think, is to ask God to hear you. And C.S. Lewis has that phrase, God has all of eternity to hear your prayers. And to realize that God is so anxious to hear from us and longs to hear from us as his people. And so if you're listening to this today and you kind of wonder, is there anybody out there, and does this prayer matter? Allow these daily dwells, these scriptures, these psalms to be the kinds of things that help you realize that you can be vulnerable with God and that we can't grow without being vulnerable with God. Anything else that comes to mind for you on vulnerability you want to share as a parting word today?
To riff a little bit on what you just said right there, as a parent of 2 children, there's something really beautiful about our relationship when they're able to come to me in need and say, Dad, I'm at a place. And then,
as long as it's not math homework, because they don't do math their same way anymore.
Yeah,
they do
go
it
to
wrong.
Mom with that one there.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, I can't help you with that. But there have been times when they have taken matters into their own hands a little bit, not asking for help, and maybe made things a little bit worse in the process. And for me, it's not that they made matters worse. For me, it's, don't you know I was here?
Mm-hmm.
I would love to help you with that. And I think God looks at us as well and says, I'd love to help you with that. But it's going to take vulnerability to say, Father, I need your help here. So in the way that I even relate to my children, I think is a microcosm of the ways that God longs to relate to each and every one of us.
So when Paul says that God is able to do immeasurably more than all that we even ask, like we need to ask God and trust that God can do immeasurably more.
Amen.
And so trust that this month. Thanks again, Rich.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast, a conversation where we're beginning to learn what it means to dwell in God's presence and for God to dwell with us. We hope that you will look for more information on our website at peachtreechurch.com/dwell for more information, to give us feedback, and to let us know that you're participating in a life with God in a whole new way.